Hi guys, prominent Remainer or Rejoiner Gina Miller was delivering a speech for her True and Fair party where she took a question from a journalist. How quickly could the UK rejoin the EU? Gina's response was quite surprising. 3 years. Now what's important is that she didn't specify 3 years from what date. The business leader and activist has pointed out in an article that she quoted in her response to the question that Britain is still pretty much aligned with EU standards and that previous membership will speed up the process of rejoining. Have a listen.
How quickly do you think the United Kingdom could rejoin the EU? Can you explain the policy and your strategy for that in the campaign?
We believe it's possible in a 3-year time frame. I did write an op-ed in The Independent where I spell out exactly how that's possible. And everyone I've spoken to in Europe says it's a political choice. The rest of it comes after. It's about the politics. And so we see, with the damage that is evident day by day, that we need to start that process now.
And she's correct. The process needs to begin as soon as possible. Now, when she's talking about 3 years, of course, she's not talking about 2026. She's talking about after the application to join the European Union or rejoin, depending on which term you want to use. She's talking about 3 years. Now, in the article, and I'll leave a link in the description of this video, I do recommend reading it. But I want to highlight some of the points that she raised and, well, perhaps problems with what she's pointed out as well. So it says here, what conditions would Britain have to meet? Article 49, the somewhat less famous sister of Article 50, the formal process of leaving the EU, is the article of the EU treaty that governs joining the bloc. It states that any European state which respects the common EU values and is committed to promoting them may apply to become a member of the Union. These values include human dignity, freedom, democracy, equality, the rule of law. In other words, Britain would have to ensure its house was in order. Now, there are a few things to say about this. Something that has put Britain over the last number of years before Brexit, as put it in a sense as an outlier, was the approach to the European Union, the promotion of the European Union. So what I mean is that if you look back at old footage of John Major, for example, when he was Prime Minister, or Tony Blair when he was Prime Minister, and others in the run-up to 2015, 2016, I never saw the Union flag sitting next to the European flag, the Council of Europe flag. Now, if you look at footage from other European states, of course, the ones that are still members, you'll always see the national flag sitting right next to the European flag. This is something I never saw when it came to British politics. Why? I don't know. So I think that's something that would have to change. There would have to be an embracing of Europe, an embrace of the European Union. There would have to be a promotion of the European Union. You know, if you look at countries that want to join, for example, Ukraine, they are promoting the idea of the European Union all the time. We want to be part of this. We see it as something very positive. So the rhetoric and the politics would have to change a great deal before the EU would say, well, we have to see if you're serious. Are you promoting EU values or are you promoting the EU? It also talks about the Copenhagen criteria and, well, when would it start? So she says here, once talks have started, they might not be quick. On average, it has taken approximately 9 years for a current member from submitting a membership application to signing the accession treaty. Miller said, citing examples such as Cyprus, the Czech Republic, Estonia, Hungary, Latvia, and Lithuania. But Britain may have an advantage over these countries, its recent membership. So what she's saying here is that, well, because the UK used to be a member, it might be easier to rejoin. Now, in a sense, you could say yes, but in another sense, definitely not. Because, you know, once again, we get back to this point of promoting the EU. Who would the EU look at in a more favorable light? Is it a country that used to be a member, didn't seem very committed, politically. I'm not talking about economically. I'm not talking about when it comes to projects in science and research and investment. I'm talking about politics. I'm talking about the image the politicians present. Would the EU be more open to a country that didn't seem all that committed politically, was a bit of a thorn in the side of many other European states, over a country that is openly supportive of joining the EU, is very pro-EU? So, in a sense, yes, the UK could rejoin quicker than others because it's aligned. It's still aligned in many ways. Depending on the Tories. If the Tories continue to remain in power, that's going to go in the opposite direction. But if Labour get into power and they promote the European Union, yes, it could benefit rejoining. But if there are other countries that are at the moment saying we are meeting the criteria and we're actively supporting and promoting the EU, then the EU may look at them in a more favourable light. It also talks about opt-outs. But I think, once again, when it comes to, I mentioned this before, there seems to be a lot of cherry picking going on. Well, we want to be a member of the European Union, but we don't want this, this and that. And I think when the negotiations begin, the UK may be in a position where it'll have to compromise on a large number of areas in order to join. Because the EU will say, well, look, do you want to be in or not? We don't want a troublemaker. And when it comes to the troublemaking, of course, politics is going to have to change in Britain. Proportional representation, replacing first past the post. There's also talk about, for example, joining the euro. Now, Gina Miller in her article says, well, many countries haven't joined the euro, but you have to actually say that you're going to join the euro and then not do it, but you have to actively say, yes, we want to join the euro. And I think this politically could be problematic because the politicians will understand they don't actually have to do it. It just gets kicked into the long grass every few years. But they actually have to tell the public, yes, we, as part of the process of joining the EU, we have to adopt the euro. And that might be difficult politically. So, if the UK is successful in convincing the public and politicians that they need to be more pro-European, that the way forward is being a member of the European Union, that's the big first step. If the public are on board, if the politicians are on board, then the application can begin. But 3 years, I think, is a bit ambitious. Especially the idea that, well, the UK would be at the front of the queue because it used to be a member. I think that's a double-edged sword. But let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.